All right, today is November 29, 2017, Wednesday. This is the meeting of the Kubernetes CSI implementation group. Today on the agenda, we're going to discuss the issues that have come up post code freeze, then do a status update, and then go into anything you guys want to talk about. So first up is the RBAC rules missing and feature gate being incorrect. Vlad jumped on this yesterday and sent out a PR. We're awaiting. I think we got PR we got feedback on the PR. Let me see if
yes, we got a lot of feedback.
Yeah.
So I started this morning working on those feedback. I'm doing some testing right now, and we'll be pushing. We were missing feature gate right here, so I'm putting that in.
Okay.
And then a couple of the authorizer. I'm gonna need somebody to hold my hand and tell me where that is exactly.
Okay.
And if it's something we should touch right now or punt later. And then the issue of listing, well, kind of related to authorizer and when activating or authorizing listing from the node RBAC.
Yeah. So the deal here is that ideally, the only thing that the kubelet should be doing is getting an individual volume attachment object.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
But we have two places in the kubelet code where we reach out for volume objects. One is the wait for attach object, where we get a volume attachment object, and that's not a problem.
Mm-hmm.
The second is the actual mount call, where we list all the volume attachment objects and then parse them and figure out which one to use.
Right.
That's a little bit funky design, but we did that as a kind of shortcut for alpha. But the problem is that apparently nodes are blocked from doing lists on API objects.
Okay.
One is because of the RBAC permissions, but you can easily fix that by modifying the RBAC permission, and Jonathan is okay with it if you wrap that RBAC permission in a gate, which we already did.
Mm-hmm.
Second bit is the node authorizer. And the node authorizer is a component that sits in front of the API server, and it provides additional protection on top of the RBAC rules.
Right.
So the node authorizer will see if the request is coming from a node, and if it is, then it'll say, okay, even if you have, if you are allowed to access, for example, all the pods, I'm only going to allow you to get the pods that are actually scheduled to you. You're not allowed to get pods scheduled to other nodes. And so that component, my understanding is just blanket prevents lists on all objects. So if we're going to do a list here, then we need to make sure that we update the node authorizer to permit the list operation to happen, if that makes sense.
Yeah. So the one reason why we're doing a list is because there is a possibility when setup is called that we're missing information.
Yeah, and so that I think leads into the second issue we have here.
Okay.
Is that currently the way that the code is structured, it passes through the Kubernetes node ID.
Yeah.
And technically that's not correct according to the spec. So we can talk about whether that's worth fixing or not. The implications of this are that if you have a volume plugin that does not implement the controller publish, things like NFS, for example, then this is a non-issue.
Mm-hmm.
If you have a CSI volume driver that implements controller publish, then it must understand the Kubernetes node name, which is breaking the spec, but like if you're doing EPD or Amazon's EBS,
Hmm.
it should be fine. But if you have some sort of custom node ID, then it's not going to work. So the question is, should we fix this now, or should we fix it in the next milestone?
Right. Um, I'm thinking the next milestone so we can better understand it.
Yeah.
Um, with the limitation that alpha is going to use the assigned node name from Kubernetes for now.
Yeah.
And then I'll add it to my to-do to come back to. I think, I mean, if it's a breaking issue, we certainly can address it now.
Yeah, I mean, technically it's breaking the spec, but I think it comes down to a matter of like it's going to be a trade-off, right? So we will be able to get any anything that doesn't do an attach to work because it doesn't go through this path. It doesn't care about what the node ID is. Anything that doesn't attach, as long as it uses the Kubernetes node ID, is going to be happy. But
I'll look at it to see what the implications are as far as fixing it right now. If it's a quick fix, I'll just go ahead and drop it in the bug PR that I have going right now.
Okay.
If not, then I'll just make a note and then come back to it.
Got it.
I have an issue for our alpha things that we find that we're going to push to beta, because if we could point to that issue that all the issues linked to, for example, and that for users to understand these are the things that are missing in alpha. We do that, or do we have that?
Yeah, we're going to I have a running list of things that we're missing and that we're going to need for beta, and Vlad also has a list.
Yeah.
We're planning on combining those two lists and having it ready for when we're ready for work on beta.
No, I mean, like, no, what I'm saying is that you make it as a Kubernetes issue, so it's public, so that we can refer others out there and they can see.
Got it.
These are all the issues that they are linked to it.
Yes.
Because then they can see these are all the issues that Alpha has that I understand that they're going to be worked
honestly,
on.
that should be part of it could be an issue, but it should definitely be part of the documentation as well.
Yeah, and then documentation can refer to that issue, which can link because it's live, right?
Okay,
so
I think that's reasonable.
Hey, what about versioning? I know I've been out for a while. Maybe I missed this. It kind of came up on the call earlier.
Versioning of which component?
All of it. So, with the external provisioner, we had problems when we changed the API because we hadn't versioned our API. And I'm afraid that if we don't do something to lock down a version here, we're going to have the same problems with all the drivers we write or any of the other Kubernetes pieces going forward.
So as far as the versioning between the external components and CSI, since we're vendoring CSI, it should be pretty consistent, and we can always rev. And CSI itself is versioned, so that's shouldn't be an issue. The external attacher, external provisioner, and the what I'm calling the registrar, we should version them. You're right. Could we use Docker container versioning to handle this?
Right now you're tagging them as 0.1.
Okay, that I think seems reasonable.
Well, the one nasty thing we ran into with the external provisioner was the provisioners that were already deployed when we changed the when we changed the we added a field or something, the block support, and the older external provisioners didn't recognize the new field and wouldn't know how to handle that. Right. So it's not a development time versioning problem. It's things running out in the field problem.
Yeah. So basically, we need the caller to be able to probe the version of the external provisioner, attacher, etc., and then be able to, you do an if statement on that and say, I want to do X if the version is less than this or greater than this.
It could be part of like the gRPC URL or something. I mean, that's kind of how they do an etcd, right?
The problem is that the communication between the Kubernetes components and the external components is through the API server. And it's essentially the Kubernetes will create API objects and the external components will react to them. And so it's not like Kubernetes is invoking the external components. So the if-else behavior can't go in there. It needs to be baked into the external components themselves, but that means that the external components need to know which version of something that they understand, and I don't know if that's possible with the API machinery.
I mean, we're going to probably step into something pretty nasty in future release.
Yeah, I completely agree, but I don't know if there is a way out of it, unfortunately.
Yeah, I think I kind of brought this up a while ago about how is it that we do matching between the client and server and versioning also in gRPC. I don't know if that has to do more with the CSI spec or not.
So right now, at least with the code that Vlad has in tree, it's just a hard match. If it's 0.1, it'll be happy. If it's not going to be happy. We need to fix that code. Yeah, there's a to-do there to make it a little bit more forgiving.
Add it to the list.
Yep.
So quickly going back to the first item there, as far as in the setup or setup at, do we know, or Saad, do you know the instances when some of the information would not be available when that method is invoked? Because if we can identify, maybe it's a lot of time, maybe it's a very tiny amount of time, because that would make the issue of having to do a list go away.
Yes. So basically, the node API object is going to have label. The label is going to be csi.beta.whatever / node IDs. And that value for that particular label is going to be a JSON blob that contains driver name and node name for that node. So essentially what you would have to do, and you can use there's a volume host interface that you can use to fetch the node labels.
Yeah, I've used that.
Okay. So you use that to fetch the node labels, and then you look for the label that corresponds to the CSI node IDs. Then you pull out the value, and then you have to JSON parse that value and look for your driver ID. If you find it, then you found the driver name, or you found the node name to use. If you don't, then it's essentially an error, meaning for some reason the correct label doesn't exist. We can make the recovery behavior, use the Kubernetes node ID. I'm not sure whether we should do that or not, or we could just make it an error condition.
I see what you're saying. So those two issues are basically related. That's why we did the list, because of the identifying the node properly. Okay.
Exactly.
Okay.
So you could just tackle them together and say, I'm going to go ahead and modify this to go and fetch the node ID from the label and then use the node ID. And you would have to do it in two places. One is the mount method, and the other is the create, the attach method.
Right. The attach, yeah, definitely the attach, and then the create. I mean the mount, where I did it so in the mount, instead of doing the list, I'd be able to grab that node name or node ID and properly get the object directly instead of doing the list.
Yes.
Okay. Better understood the issue right now. Okay.
So one thing I want to do is make sure we keep an eye on the upcoming deadlines for 1.9. So we are already in code freeze. Doc's deadline is December 1st, which is this Friday. That's something we should keep an eye on. And then after that, beta is going to be cut December 6th.
So it will be KubeCon week.
Yeah. And then docs should be complete by the 8th, which is Friday next week, KubeCon week.
Did you guys see the doc that somebody added?
Yeah.
I reviewed it. It looked pretty good.
Oh, somebody already added a doc for CSI?
Yeah.
For the CSI plugin.
Oh, man.
Just this plugin section.
Okay.
Somebody I don't even know.
I didn't know who it was, but
Very nice.
the issue is, should we pursue a more meaty documentation section similar to what is it called, the network plugins? They have a section.
This is alpha, though, right? I mean,
not for alpha. I think for alpha, we just need to have the bare minimum in there and then point to our own external documentation. And then for beta, we can say, okay, we're more certain of what this thing looks like, and we can have our own section with more details.
I almost feel like we shouldn't do anything else. We should just leave it as it is because it's alpha, and then we could externally write a blog or something about it, or some text and say, this is how you set this up, and then that's it, right?
Yeah, I think that's what Saad is saying.
Yeah.
Yeah, okay, yeah, I agree.
Are you writing a blog or?
Yes, I'm going to be writing a blog that is due on December 4th.
Is it the blog of how to use it, or what it is?
Everything.
Oh,
how to use it, what it is, where it came from, who worked on it.
But it's not a detail how to.
Sorry?
Is it a detail how to?
I would like it. I'd like to include a how you're going to be able to use it as a end user who just wants to use a CSI driver that's already deployed on your system.
I see.
Have a section about if I am a storage vendor, how do I write and deploy a CSI plugin on Kubernetes? Basically,
but that's the section I'm writing, right?
I'd like to include that in the blog post or point to it.
So here's just a suggestion. The two things you just mentioned, the blog post could be, bloggy style.
Yep.
But then it could point to, yeah, you know what I mean. But then it could point to two living documents, which is how do I use it and how do I write one, right?
Okay.
Because then the blog becomes static, right?
Yeah. So since we're already talking about documentation, let's jump down to that section and keep track of all this stuff. So for the K8SIO documentation, there's a PR already out by someone, and we're saying that this is sufficient for alpha. There's going to be a second set of documentation which Luis are going to put in the external provisioner. And then there is a blog post that is going out. So
well, the external provision that what I'm writing is how to develop it. Yeah, you got it. Yeah.
Can you also throw in how user consumes it, since I imagine that the documentation that is on K8SIO is not going to be very thorough?
Yeah. I mean, that shouldn't take too long.
And can you get that done by the December 1 date?
Wait, that's for external documentation, right?
Oh, that's for external documentation, but I have December 4th is the deadline for the blog post.
So you want to link to it. You got it.
Cool.
Yep. Okay. I thought that Vlad was going to start writing some of the user style.
Some of the
Vladimir,
web.
you were going to write some documentation on how the user was going to set it up. Is that what? Yeah.
Yeah,
No,
That's
so
what.
I think he
I
was
was gonna
planning
do
on.
what the guy did.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Gotcha. Gotcha.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. So
Um,
you're lucky.
no- well, yeah, but I'm looking at how network plugins, which is alpha,
Okay.
is pretty detailed. So I'm wondering if I'm trying to look for the link so I can post it, and you guys can take a look and let
Okay.
me know if it's something that we should be considering. But once I find it, I'll post it, and you guys let me know.
Okay. Then I will volunteer to write those two things because um, I want to know how to use it and I want to know how to write it. I mean, I've been writing a driver for a while, so
Okay.
and I wrote the E2E test. So
So if you could get that link to me by Friday, then I'll include that in the blog post, and then we'll just be okay with whatever PR is already out for the KAS documentation.
you without it, and I'll create a Docker repo in CSI Kubernetes. So we'll have those.
Okay. So that resolves that. So let's go back to our first couple issues here and make sure we have action items moving forward. So for this, how do you want to proceed, Vlad?
So let me bring back my screen here. For which one? This one, which is the node ID.
Yeah.
I think I'm gonna look at it
Okay.
and try to take it on today.
Okay.
Because that call that you mentioned that returned the node ID, I used it somewhere else. I don't remember where to grab the labels.
Yeah.
I just have to figure out, like you were saying, figure out which label that I'm interested in.
Yep.
So
the label that you're interested in is all in the design doc?
Right. That's what I was about to say. I mean, I'll put the code in there.
Yep.
Throw some tests around it. But hopefully, who's doing I'd like for it to go through some end to end, if that's
Yeah.
We can talk about that in a second.
So I'll definitely take it on. Get the code in there. Put some tests around it because
Okay.
the fake client actually has that method implemented.
Yep.
I remember working with that just to kind of put some unit tests around it and make sure it works. And then that will allow me to take on what's the other one? Oh, the first item, which is the setup app.
Yep.
So if I can get these two in, then there's a bunch of to-dos that will basically melt away because I won't have to do them.
Right.
Especially with the authorizer and stuff like that.
Yeah, because it sounds like we'll have to do additional work just to get around this, so might as well do what we want to do.
Yes, exactly. That's exactly right.
Okay,
So I'd rather
that
spend
seems
the time
reasonable.
and get
And do you want to bundle it all into the same PR, or?
I think that, yeah, I'll just change the title of the PR.
Okay.
Yeah, I mean,
Cool.
it's all fixes.
Okay, and so right now I've marked the issue and the PR as 1.9, so it's being tracked for 1.9, but that means that you gotta do that little act thing that's bugging you about at the bottom.
Oh, is it? Okay. I saw it. I was like, I'm not sure.
Yeah, you just have to do that every day and say, I'm basically working on this thing, this guy.
Okay. 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 All right.
Wow.
Machine to human.
I know.
Machine language. Okay. Okay. Yeah. I'll concentrate on that.
Okay.
And if I get it, hopefully get it done. I should be able to get it done today.
Okay.
And then if I have bandwidth between today and the first, I'll see if I'll look at that documentation and see if it's something I want to add to or whatever.
Okay. And I think as soon as we reduce the scope, Liggett will be okay with this too.
Yeah, right. Yeah.
All right,
Good.
cool. Thanks a lot for that. And we'll keep an eye out Next up, status updates, end-to-end tests. Luis, you want to talk about these?
Yes, absolutely. So I put in the end-to-end test yesterday for that works on the external attacher communication with Kubernetes and stuff like that. So one of the comments that you had, Saad, and is Michelle's also, is should this be in Kubernetes end-to-end test? Because it's not truly end-to-end because it doesn't work yet with Vladimir's code. Now, I understand the reasoning behind it because it's just not truly end-to-end. It's like half end-to-end because it kind of combines a lot of parts. But my suggestion here is that this should go inside Kubernetes end-to-end test because this is an integral part of how Kubernetes uses CSI. If there were multiple methods of how to use CSI in Kubernetes, then I would say, yeah, you're completely right? But just because these are external components, just like we have external API server, external list, right? We need to make sure that this all works together all the time. And that's why I feel that these end-to-end tests should go in there. This is my opinion.
Yeah, so I think that's a good point. And the component itself should definitely be tested. But the question is whether that test should reside within Kubernetes or it should be external to Kubernetes. And the way that I see it, the way the test is currently written, basically what it's doing is it's imitating the behavior that Kubernetes would do. For example, creating the volume attachment object and watching to make sure that the external attacher reacts to it and then validating that. So really what it's testing is the external attacher, not the Kubernetes behavior. And while it's important to do that, that test doesn't need to live inside Kubernetes. It could live in the external storage repo as a separate test harness there. I understand that creating a test harness in that external repo is going to be challenging, so we don't need to do that immediately. We can probably punt on that. Instead, what I would like to see for the end-to-end test inside Kubernetes is to exercise the Kubernetes code paths. In doing so, I think we'll get coverage on this path anyway. So instead of your code having to generate the volume attachment object, you set up the correct pods and correct PV, PVC, and then Vlad's code is going to go ahead and create the volume attachment object. And then you can still put your external attacher out there and have it react and make sure the appropriate things happen. So we can still test it indirectly, but the nice thing about testing it indirectly is that you're actually going to be testing the Kubernetes code, not just the external attacher.
So in other words, what we're saying is that I just need to enhance my test right now to just include the elements. Got it. I have a question for you. If and please, I apologize if this is just knowledge I don't have.
Sure.
The PVs, if I create a PV by hand,
yep.
Does that pull in Vladimir's code, or does that mean that the user has to create the VA by themselves?
It still does. So
that's what I'm doing. That's how I test it.
Yeah.
So you create the PV, and then sets a watch, and then the watch creates the volume attachment automatically?
Yeah, it's all internal. That's how, if you create a PV and then a PVC.
No PVC.
Okay.
Just create a PV.
Create a PV, and yeah, once you do a kubectl create, and then that YAML.
But creating a PV alone isn't going to do anything, right? Because all it does is create an object. Now you need the system to react to it. Right. And how do you make the system react to it? You have to create a PVC object. And there's code that already does this for other volume plugins. So you could probably reuse that. And that will bind the PVC to PV. There's no unique logic there, so there's nothing special or new there. The special or unique stuff happens when you try to consume that PVC through a pod. So then you create a pod that points to a bound PVC, which is pointing to a PV, which is referencing a CSI volume. Now Kubernetes goes, okay, I need to attach this volume. Let me do that. So it's going to call attach. Attach is going to create the volume attachment object.
Okay.
And then your external attacher should react and all the correct things should happen. And you need to validate that the external attacher was invoked and that it returned a response and that Kubernetes then said, okay, attachment is successful. You can examine the volume attachment object if you want. You don't need to create it, but you can examine it. And then you can follow through with the mount operation and see if that happens correctly. Today, we know that the mount operation is broken until Vlad's code change gets in, but you can write the test in parallel, and as soon as his code gets in, then the test should be green.
Well, speaking of which, so whatever I have in my, whatever changes I made yesterday in that PR, RootFS tested it this morning.
Nice.
His last post on Slack was, "It works." So
sweet. So yeah, you could use his current PR as a starting point if you want.
So okay, so that means that I really have two tests. One is a dynamic provision PVC request with a storage class, and the second is a manual PV created with a PV. Okay.
Yep.
All right, I can do that.
And
when is the deadline for this?
Strongly look at I think. Let's see, pd.go, E2E. There's existing tests that do storage, which do the creation of the PVC, and you can probably reuse a lot of those.
Okay.
Like pd.go, I think, does a lot of this. I think the pd.go doesn't create a PVC, so it might not be the best example. But you can follow other examples in here.
Okay. And when is the deadline for E2E tests?
Ideally as soon as possible, but let's take a look at end of code freeze, docs complete. So I think when the beta RC, oops.
I think before code freeze, because you may need a test for any bugs you put in.
Before code freeze, you mean?
Yeah, like before December 11th is what I'm wondering.
December 11th, end of code freeze. Yeah, that makes sense. That definitely makes sense.
Okay.
And so we're looking at what, 2 weeks? Or like a week and a half. Yeah. So I mean, the sooner you could get the PRs out, the better. But
absolutely.
Next week, if possible.
I'm just trying to prioritize between documentation and my driver.
Makes sense. Okay.
So.
Cool.
Okay. But I will get those changes. Thanks for the help.
Perfect. All right.
Oh, and that reminds me. So that means let's spill it. I know we have going past time, but we should then discuss how to in the future set up a same type of I don't know, maybe leverage Kubernetes testing, but then we apply our own tests on top, so we can run things like the external test. You see what I mean?
Yep. Yeah, we can consider all of that after the basic tests are in.
Yep.
Okay, next up is the external provisioner. Brad, do you have any updates on what the status of this is right now?
The status is that Obama said that he had this finished and it just needed the image to be
Chakri, could you mute, please?
Oh.
All right, thanks. So Brad, the status here is that it's complete, just needs an image generated, Docker image?
Yeah, we just need to do the build and push of the image.
Perfect.
I faintly remember seeing credentials for that a couple weeks ago. Was that right? Like there was a Docker Hub account or something we created?
Yeah, I think we created it and he added everybody as a, you could reach out to him to get your account added to that group.
Yeah, I'll check right now if you're on it.
What are we doing for CI? Are we having any kind of CI or are we just going to spin it every time by hand?
We should. add CI. If you have the bandwidth for it now, feel free to go ahead and start adding that. But lower priority than getting the actual provision complete.
CI for what specifically?
Well, like rebuilding the Docker images, rebuilding. I don't know how we're distributing this.
Right now, the external external attach is done by Jan, and then I push the mock one. So you have the rights to push your own image up there and tag it.
Okay.
So I just gotta make sure you're on there. I'll check in a second. You are not there. What's your Docker name?
Childs B. CHILDS-B.
You are there now. So now you have the right to push, and you.
Okay. Can rootfs have rights too?
What's his name?
rootfs.
Wameen.
Yeah, Wameen.
All right. So you both have rights now.
Okay.
And the location is. Do you know the location already? It's down there by the.
No.
It's all right. Let me add it to the doc there. Where should I add it? To the top, maybe.
Sure.
I'll just like a pin part. Docker Hub. It's
okay. So moving on, documentation. We already talked about documentation and blog posts. Those are in progress. The sidecar container for kubelet registration and node ID is currently in the works. I'm actively working on it. I created a sister repo to the external provisioner, external attacher, which I'm putting all the contents into, hoping to have that done by end of day today. For the CSI volume plugins, I think Wamin made a comment that could you please identify which ones are actively being worked on and which ones are not, because there's folks in the community who are eager to start helping out on these. Chakri, any updates?
Yeah, I think Shilpa is actually working, like she wants to demo the iSCSI.
Perfect. Okay. Let me stop presenting. And
yeah.
All right, go ahead.
Yeah. Let me share my screen. Hi folks, this is Shilpa here. So I would like to demonstrate iSCSI driver CSI plugin. So let me start the iSCSI driver that I have. So basically this driver has implemented node publish and unpublish APIs. So this is my iSCSI driver and I'm starting over here. Listening on port 1000. So I'm using CSC tool for passing the attributes to CSI driver. So here this is the target path and these are the volume attributes for iSCSI. The target portal information, IQN, LUN.
I think this is also a multipath driver. That means that you can have actually 2 target portals.
Yeah, so the same target is available on 2 different interfaces. So now it says that the device is mounted.
Does this implement a controller publish or just node publish?
Just the node publish.
Okay, perfect.
Node publish and node unpublish, yeah. So now you can see that it is already mounted. Let me show you the mount over here. So this is the mount path that we gave, and This actually, the driver is based on the current Kubernetes iSCSI plugin implementation. So what it does today is it actually appends some target informations to the mount path. So that is what has been done, and we have some questions on this to rootfs, and then Chakri is trying to follow up with him. Because basically, like at the time of volume publish, we actually get the volume attributes, and that can be used to construct the mount point. But at the time of unpublish, we only give the mount path and the volume name. We don't have enough information to completely construct this target, the mount point. So because of that, we won't be able to unmount the volume. So right now I can show with unpublish over here, I'm passing the complete information. With this, we'll be able to unmount, but that information won't be available for us. Because basically, iSCSI, we need to delete the node information. We have to log out from the target, and we need all the target IP addresses, IQN, and the interface details for it. So we need to decouple that information.
Sorry guys, I lost the internet over here suddenly. Okay.
So is this driver a flex, using a flex adapter, or is it a native?
No, this is a direct CSI driver.
So it is a native driver. Okay.
It's a driver. Actually, think of it as actually a port of the existing K8s driver.
I'm sorry, say it again.
It is actually a port of the existing K8s driver. What are the internal driver we have for the Kubernetes?
Oh,
almost similar.
Right.
Exactly similar, actually.
Okay, cool.
Yeah. So Saad, actually, we cannot do control or publish for iSCSI, right? Because all the actions are not local.
Exactly. And I think the current entry iSCSI volume plugin is starting to, it implemented an attacher. I don't think that was a good decision. I would like
actually attacher was nil in that case. They didn't do anything in there, right?
What's that?
The attacher function was actually not implemented. It just implements the functions, but all it does is only wait for attach.
Wait for attach, and that's really funky to me. I don't think they should be doing that. To jam behavior and like that. So I like the way that this is implemented. It only implements node publish.
So there are a couple of concerns in here, right? When we do the node unpublished, today we don't get any of this IQN information. So for iSCSI detach, you need the IQN information.
What is provided on the node unpublished call?
So we don't have actually only the target path.
Yeah, I see.
So the target path over here is only mount iSCSI, but if you see when the volume was mounted, we appended all this information, right? And that
Got it. And then you're using that.
Yeah.
Is that what Kubernetes is currently doing for iSCSI?
Yes.
Okay.
So that's one thing, and the Kubernetes also stores a JSON file actually with all the information, because even with this, you can only get one information, right? 251. You cannot get the 250, which is another session.
I see.
In a multipath session. So they're storing it in a JSON file. So I synced with Wrapup today. So since you can fetch out that information from Linux kernel, because that's already maintaining those session information.
I see.
So we might have to modify the driver to make sure that use the information from the Linux kernel, and from that actually go and detach it rather than using the JSON file. But from the CSI side, it brings the question like, do we need to pass any information in the unpublished, or do we expect the plugin to have enough context to do the unpublished?
From the CSI side of things, we want the volume to be able to discover all the information that it needs to unpublish, because the CO may not necessarily have that state. It can possibly corrupt its own state, lose its state. So it should just be able to say, I don't need this volume anymore. Please take care of it. Do whatever you have to do to take care of it.
Okay. So then we will be doing almost what we are currently doing for Kubernetes, trying to figure out the information from internally.
Yep.
Okay. Sounds good. We'll follow that, and yeah, we'll see.
Cool.
Okay.
I think this would be fun to demo at the CSI meeting too, if you guys are interested.
Yeah, let's do that.
Okay.
Shilpa, you're up for it, right?
Okay. Thank you.
Cool. And the other thing I would mention is we should, so in the driver folder that we have, the repository, for each driver, we should have the driver itself, which can be compiled and run independently, but also the packaging.
Yes, deployment. I'm going to work on it. Yes.
Perfect.
Yep.
Right.
Yep. So the plan is to create a deploy folder, and let's see actually where we want to keep it. You want to keep it inside the driver, or we want to keep it
just keep it
external?
inside the driver. That way, it could be very easy to find for someone who wants to actually test it out. And you can be really fancy and throw in a README for it if you want.
Okay, we'll do that.
Awesome. Thanks, guys. That looks great.
Yeah, and for the GC PD, I'm working on it. I'm still not there. You guys have a lot of code in there. I'm trying to put that all to over here with all the zones, replicated zones. Yeah.
Yep. Okay.
Yep. So
we're going to mark that as orange as being worked on.
Yep.
And we'll tell Huamin that AWS and Azure are not being worked on right now.
Yep.
Okay. Do we have anything else we want to talk about?
Yeah, actually, Saad, you want to remove my name right next to AWS, and then
yes, that's
right?
Yeah.
So just remove my name and say that. Yeah, just make them even remove the strike off also.
Yep.
And even remove the rootfs name also. And if somebody wants to start working on it, they can put their name in there, right?
Perfect.
Which one is that one?
Root Azure and AWS. If anybody wants to work on it, they're free to work on it. So
okay, Azure and AWS.
Yeah.
Okay.
You can put a you can put a TBD. So yeah. Actually, Huamin was looking at it, but I'm not sure which particular driver. He himself said he's going to work on FC.
AWS, we'll probably end up doing something for AWS right away.
Okay, perfect.
All right. So last meeting on Monday, we set the deadline as Thursday for having all the external code changes complete. The external code changes that are remaining, it looks like we're going to be able to hit that deadline. I'll try to get my stuff in by end of day today. Do you guys want to meet tomorrow morning, or do you want to meet again on Friday?
Either one works for me. I think if we meet Friday, we're just pushing the date and one more day, which is always good. So that's fine too.
Okay. Anybody really want to meet on Thursday? All right. So then we'll call our next meeting on Friday.
Friday. Yep, that works.
All right. See you, folks.
See you guys.
Thank you, guys. Bye.